English translation, 846th Contact Sunday, the 21st of May 2023, 1456 HRS.
Greetings, my friend.
I really did not expect to see you now, but greetings to you too. I was almost startled because I was not prepared for someone visiting me and suddenly standing here.
Ptaah summoned me here because I have the following to tell you. Furthermore, I have been instructed to remain on the station as liaison between you and Ptaah during his absence until his return. In doing so, I will take the liberty of moving around the center daily, undetected of course, to see what transpires day by day.
That is a long speech, and quite unpleasant besides, to which I also think I will stick to it throughout and keep quiet about it, as you and Ptaah recommend.
That really is required, however, I want you to know.
I have known this since Svath's time, and already he said that I should not tell anything about it, so for that reason alone I will not let anything be known.
I am aware of that too, but it is really good that we keep quiet about it, because it would really not be good because it would only trigger fear and make everything worse.
Yes, that would be effective. But it is good that you stay here, because Jaffa and Jurata are not that versed with the things that happen here on Earth, even though they are very concerned about everything. They were also kind of horrified when we were away together and saw that they could not understand that this is kept from the public and is being done. They are obviously not used to such things, and consequently they should be kept away from it. But away from that, I am glad you are here because I have some ideas about nature work that I would like to discuss with you. Fortunately, Pius is now joining in the attack, for he is interested in it and is constantly occupied with it, and he also listens to my instructions, has eyes of his own in his head, and understands how to see what is necessary and must be done.
That is good, and as I saw, he is doing his job well. However, as for what was discussed earlier, you should not mention the whole of the observations in retrieving and writing down our conversation. Perhaps you should give hints from which those who are interested can make up their minds. But that is all you should do. Besides, it is always necessary for you to be oriented about what I have told you, for your knowledge of it is still very important in order to do the right thing.
I guess it is necessary to stick to it and keep silent when questions arise and are asked because of it. But you also said that the little ones have also been concerned for some time now with the steadily worsening events here on Earth. And as you say, they have noticed that the Earthlings are becoming steadily more deviant in their non-thinking and in their behaviors humanly.
You are to be visited after all because they want to report to you.
You said that some time ago, but no one has come from these little bulbs.
I am aware of that.
Exactly. Obviously, it takes even longer. But I am interested to know if you know what's going on with the last generation demonstration clique, which, as Ptaah already told me a year ago, is controlled by a rotten, unrighteous, and criminal part of America, and that for the purpose of, but what is actually intended by, these idiotic demonstrations, which I do not want to say openly. Because Ptaah said that other like-minded people would take up the banner and do the same because they are just as stupid as those who thoughtlessly take part in the criminal demonstrations without knowing what is actually intended, is harebrained. However, I would be surprised if the German Secret Service is so stupid and dumb that they really do not realize behind it all, namely that it is all arranged and controlled from America for the hand stickers on streets and car tires. And they also cause enormous damage with paints and sprays. All this, as Ptaah said, is the work of...
I can mention the following about that. What unfortunately happens is that many persons allow themselves to be thoughtlessly provoked and create personal as well as public damage, as they also affect many fellow human beings and get paid for it. Furthermore, it is to be said that the demonstrators and quite a lot of damage-causing persons of the last generation are a sectarian criminal organization organized and directed by America, in which another pathologically thinking and financially very rich person participates. In Germany, among other countries, The organization also obtains taxpayers' money, with which criminal and highly damaging demonstration actions are financed, and the authors also enrich themselves, as well as the demonstrators unthinkingly damage order and economic and private achievements through all their actions.
This is what Ptaah said about a year ago, but nothing was said openly because we talked about it privately, and also because I never call up or record private things. But I think that we should now talk about what is really happening, as well as about the fact that behind the last generation, there is an American crazy and rich woman who supports and finances all the crazy machinations of the likewise crazy hand-ticklers, of which even the ignorant and idiotic demonstrators are probably unaware, because they are as stupid as beans.
Which we should not go on about, though, because every word is too much because it's meaningless to all the ignorant.
As far as this is concerned, yes. And the best thing is probably if we really do not talk about it anymore. But can you explain something to me regarding the waters that are here on Earth?
I am afraid I cannot say anything about that, because I have not learned anything about that, nor have I been interested in it.
Too bad. Then I have to fall back on my knowledge. Just what I learned from Svath, as well as what information I know from newspapers, the radio, and TV. Everything is somewhat different from what is generally known, and I was also asked again. I do not know why, because generally you learn this at school, how much water there is on Earth. But I do not know exactly, only approximately, just what is actually generally known. But the question of how old the water is, and to what extent it can be considered the basis of life, I think I can answer according to what I learned from Svath and halfway through school. However, no human being knows how much water there really is on Earth. Superficially, the Earth's surface is covered with a little more than 70% water, which corresponds to about 330 billion cubic kilometers, as I have learned. But this does not include what is further inside the Earth in the form of groundwater, which certainly amounts to many more cubic kilometers. Now, the age of the waters on the Earth, however, is. This is probably still the same question that has been asked by human beings since ancient times. What apparently does not want to be understood has been produced by this planet itself to a large extent, as is the case with practically every planet. Furthermore, I have learned from Svath that the waters were also brought to Earth from Sol space by comets, asteroids, meteors, as well as ice clouds, of which our astronomers etc. still know nothing. And when I speak of the water, I also mean it, because water exists as a transparent and tasteless liquid that occurs from a combination of two elements. Namely by hydrogen, which is called H, and oxygen, which is called O, combining. A gemstone is even symbolically attributed to the waters, namely apatite, because it is supposed to radiate a refreshing and clear energy, and strengthen the self-confidence as well as promote the creativity of human beings. And with regard to the waters, I still have to explain that they condense as vapor rising from the Earth into the atmosphere to liquid water, becoming snow or rain, or they freeze into ice crystals. Then, when they fall back down to Earth, they are collected as springs, streams, rivers, swamps, bogs, lakes, groundwater, and oceans, etc. But the fact that the history of this H2O, since ancient times when it was first created from the planet, is absolutely unknown to our scientists, puzzles them. It should be said, however, that the first waters developed independently and completely naturally from the planet itself, as a result of the gluten and heat of the emerging world body. Heat and warmth led to the evaporation of the developing heat gases, which entered the empty space of the developing world body in gaseous form and formed the very first atmosphere, that is to say, a gas atmosphere. Further geological processes took place over a long period of time with regard to new evolutionary and beneficial changes, so that everything continued to change, and an atmosphere and hydrogen developed over billions of years, as did plants, and thus also oxygen, which combined with hydrogen, and further also life, which could move independently, etc., as I learned from Svath. So what rises as vapor from the waters into the high atmosphere falls back to Earth as rain, hail or snow, into the sea or onto Earth. And when it falls on Earth, it seeps into the ground and supplies the trees and all the plants with the waters, flows through the ground or collects as groundwater. It also collects again in streams and rivers and flows back into the sea. The eternal cycle of evaporation, gasification, precipitation, supply to trees and plants of all kinds, and by leaking through springs, flowing off through streams and rivers, depositing in lakes etc. and in the oceans, starts all over again. During the whole process, considerable energies are bound or released, namely already during evaporation, enormous energies are consumed, which are then released again during condensation, whereby also enormous electrical energies are produced as lightning of almost 300 kilowatt-hours kWh, which is approx. 1 gigajoule or roughly corresponds to the energy of 31 million liters of petrol. The human being consists of large parts of water, and this is and remains his and all living beings on Earth's absolutely most vital basis. The ocean currents regulate the Earth's climate, but for human beings, everything seems to be self-evident, until it is too late, because they consciencelessly and carelessly waste the vital wet. But the substance with the simple formula of H20 behaves uniquely and puzzles the Earthling again and again. But without water, every human being should realize there is no life on Earth. Even almost 4 kilometers into the depths of the Earth, I have detected life together with Svath. This is still untouched by the Earthling, but the question is, for how much longer? Truly, the world is perishing more and more through overpopulation and its destructive machinations, just as the human beings are becoming more and more degenerate and inhuman, and more stupid as well. And now, artificial intelligence is being added to the mix, which will only trigger a great evil because people are not thinking into the future, and consequently do not recognize what is coming. Recently, before leaving for a longer period of time, Ptaah spoke of the fact that in Germany alone many children and adolescents have become addicted to neo-Nazism, and are increasingly weaving it through the schools. This as a result of the fact that there are many neo-Nazi ruling elements squatting in the government and ruling neo-Nazi, in the actual government position itself, as well as in the position of exercising the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, etc. Ptaah said that according to your clarifications, not only the right-wing extremists and that part of the neo-Nazis among the people take an example from the Nazi-like actions of those in power, and turn on everything wrong and evil with it, but now also the children and adolescents in the schools. Ptaah explicitly mentioned that the wrong and idiotic actions regarding the arms deliveries to Zelensky are being copied by a large part of the Nazi behavior of the rulers to parts of the people, the children as well as the adolescents, right-wing extremists and neo-Nazis. In the same respect, he said, is the conduct and attitude of certain people in the dictatorship organization EU, especially with regard to those bigwigs who boast of German descent or are under the direct or indirect influence of the ruling neo-Nazis. All of them, by the way, are responsible and partly to blame for the fact that absolutely only one-sided success reports of war actions and war profits are made in favor of the Ukrainian military and the big-talking Zelensky, while war crimes are committed by the Ukrainian military and are not disclosed. This is consistently in contrast to the fact that regarding that the outrages of the Russian military are very much mentioned. So the war coverage is only one-sided, in the process of praising the Ukrainian military and its gains and Zelensky to the skies, and either disregarding or blowing up Russia's military and Putin. Moreover, it is the case, as I know from my own observation, that the Ukrainian forces, in addition to also operating on Russian territory and carrying out acts of sabotage, and with the help of the Yanks in the background, want to attack Moscow and other places with drones, as Zelensky has ordered, also to assassinate Putin, which I heard myself, together with Bermunda, when we were able to eavesdrop on him with the help of the language translator. But back to the waters. Just as I drank water with Svath when we traveled back to the time of the dinosaurs, so I still drink from the same waters today, though they have been renewed countless times since then through evaporation and regeneration as haze, rain, snow, hail, and drinking water. But while I am on the subject of water, it is perhaps important that I say or explain how important water is for human beings and all life on Earth. Drinking water today is of high quality, and in general there are strict guidelines regarding hygiene and safety. As a natural product, tap water contains various trace substances, but their concentration is low due to strict regulations, in such a manner that it can be drunk by human beings without hesitation, at least what applies to the civilized areas that are called civilized. At least the populations are supplied with natural and healthy drinking water, although it should be noted that the good quality of drinking water is only guaranteed where explicit and decisive attention is paid to cleanliness and purity. Dealing with water as a resource requires concrete measures that also include effective water protection, as well as their consistent implementation is indispensable, so that the high quality of tap water is also guaranteed for future generations. The drinking water quality, which is probably widely available, is based on years of efforts and financial investments, as well as scientific findings, and a lot of painstaking work, all of which was necessary to preserve the exceptional privilege of the good and valuable. Because of all the developments, it was imperative that certain measures be thought of and carried out to make it really work, and to bring about a water supply that is usually never thought of or taken for granted by all the users. However, overpopulation now means that the water supply is increasingly confronted with conflicts of use, whereby these arise in particular in the civilized world in settlement construction and agriculture as well as in market gardens, but also in third world countries through global industrial corporations that literally steal the water from the indigenous peoples, who thus have to carry the necessary drinking water for kilometers and hours. In the civilized world, zoning out or zoning in is problematic, as is also the use of certain areas where a water catchment exists. This often necessitates rezoning, forcing water suppliers to close an otherwise desirable intake, but also to install chemical treatment stages. As far as I know, in Switzerland and Germany alone, every third or fourth water supplier has had to close water catchments in the last 50 years, with conflicts of use, or also mergers being the rule. Current water extraction in Europe can be carried out in a natural way, whereby about 2/3 of the water is treated, that is to say, purified with UV light or simple filters. Intact, that is to say, clean, high-quality, and near-natural water supply presupposes intensive purification and permanent use, whereby, however, for example, private individuals, such as factories, corporations, market gardens and farms, etc., irresponsibly pollute the surface waters of the soil and the groundwater through the use of pesticides or fertilizers, etc., which makes the treatment of the water very difficult. Many water bodies, such as streams, rivers, and lakes, etc., exceed all the prescribed limits of toxins, nitrates, and pesticides. The longer, the more, and henceforth the more, and henceforth the more, and henceforth the more, and henceforth the more there is a risk that all waters will slowly become polluted, also by groundwater, and that in the very long term, consequently, the effort of treatment will increase, and drinking water can be made less and less close to nature, can be treated, and will become more expensive. However, if I now mention pesticides, this term is a collective term for both plant protection products (PPPs) and biocides. Due to high precipitation rates, the limit value in water bodies is often exceeded, and biocides are even used up to 70% in farms, and especially in large-scale nurseries, as well as in private gardens and intensively used gardens. About every fifth drinking water well is affected by pesticide concentrations in an elevated process, with pesticides therefore posing the greatest danger not only to vegetables, but also to drinking water quality, and to all bodies of water. For example, according to a veterinary medicine census, around 29 tons of antibiotics were sold in Switzerland in 2020, while around 35 tons were consumed in human medicine. Animals and livestock quickly developed resistance to many of these active substances as a result of their high use. This is despite the fact that the spread of resistance is more likely to be a long-term process, whereas the knowledge exists that the spread of antibiotic resistance worldwide is increasingly to be classified as a serious burden. If we take nitrate into account, which already occurs naturally in low concentrations in groundwater, it is clear that its main use is in fertilizing plants. If one observes the legally prescribed maximum value, then this is far too high a value for the raw water quantity, which exceeds the normal of the water bodies, which is why nitrate should only be used in very small quantities, if at all. In zones where intensive agriculture is practiced, overloads of up to approx. 60% occur, which is why the legal requirement should be disregarded to the full extent permitted, and nitrate should not be applied at all. For wastewater and water protection, the following 8 necessities, among others, must be urgently observed. 1. Infrastructure and water resources should be protected against conflicts of use and possible risks by means of guideline plans, while the supply of drinking water should be weighted heavily, that is to say, given priority in a balancing of clear interests and necessities. 2. Water supply and use must be professionalized in every process and in a locally determinable manner. 3. More effective water protection regulations and water protection legislation must be adopted and implemented, not only for private individuals, but also for industrial enterprises, companies and corporations, etc., and this must be done consistently and without any quarter. 4. The production and use of pesticides and biocides of all kinds must be restricted, with the sale being controlled and only permitted for soils, large gardens, meadows and fields on which only absolute minimum quantities of pesticides and biocides, etc., are applied in a controlled manner in accordance with the law, with the application sites not being near drinking water catchments. 5. The use of chemical pesticides of all kinds is to be banned in protection zones around drinking water catchments, by gardeners, farmers, private individuals, companies and corporations, etc. 6. All application and other use of pesticides, biocides, plant protection products and chemical poisons of any kind by agriculture, private individuals, nurseries, companies and corporations, etc., is to be prohibited in groundwater protection zones. 7. Problematic wastewater that is harmful to nature must be dissolved or converted to nature-friendly wastewater disposal through alternative nature conservation methods. 8. Governments must strive to enforce a wide variety of measures to counteract public and private or agricultural, horticultural, corporate and corporate pollution of water bodies. These points do not in any case sufficiently cover all the necessary measures to be taken, so there must be an interest in subsequently integrating what is necessary into what has been mentioned. The excess of senseless overpopulation and its destructive machinations on the planet, on nature, fauna and flora, on the atmosphere and the climate, and on all ecosystems in general, requires a very rapid and new development in all areas of all life. Effectively, it is not only alarming what is happening in terms of planetary and natural destruction and overall eco-destruction worldwide, but it is already endangering the existence of human beings, nature, and all life in general, and to a very high degree. Therefore, the human beings of the earth are called upon to guarantee a safe and high-quality drinking water supply, not only for human beings, but also for all life on earth, and to give it the status and protection to which all life is entitled. Water requires groundwater and intact bodies of water, raw water and actual drinking water, which must be of good quality. Basically, raw water and drinking water are actually 2 different types of water, namely groundwater and surface water, as they occur in nature. Basically, all natural water is so-called raw water, while drinking water actually corresponds to treated water, and is called tap water because it is piped into houses or other buildings and into village wells, etc. The designation is important because the water must be of good quality. The naming is important because the distinction between raw water and drinking water is important, which is usually not considered or understood by human beings, because raw water, unlike drinking water, is not treated and purified by human beings. Different values apply to both waters in terms of quality. Consequently, both are different in terms of quality. Public waters today are unfortunately usually polluted with pesticides, which is problematic for at least the local ecosystem, but in the long run especially for the groundwater, which may be pumped up and somehow used by human beings. However, unlike drinking water, this raw water has different limit values, and for hygienic reasons can no longer be drunk by human beings without being purified. This was the case in the past, when pesticides and biocides did not poison the environment, the air, the water, and the food grown in gardens and fields. If I now mention water quality, it must be noted that purity and cleanliness must be considered in a differentiated manner, because like every natural product, water is never found in an absolutely pure form when processed by human beings, and as a result of its location. Because from a chemical point of view, various trace substances can be found in water, as well as valuable minerals with which it is enriched naturally or by human beings. This applies not only to the various types, that is to say brands of mineral water, but also to all tap water. But really clean waters, which are actually foodstuffs, correspond throughout to the hygienic legal regulations. So drinking water from the tap basically corresponds to a tasteless distillate that can be drunk and used for food preparation without hesitation. If I now address the trace substances that are detectable in drinking water, then it is to be said that these are completely different in their type and quantity, because depending on the location, environment, and human local activity, such as a market garden, agricultural enterprise, factory, settlement zone, or industrial zone and time, the trace substances occur in higher or lower concentrations. These substances are, for example, drug residues, pesticides or nitrates, microplastics, germs or metals, etc. depending on their types and concentrations. These can be hazardous to health, whereas really clean water is purified in such a manner that its concentration of trace substances is usually so low in terms of health hazards that there is no risk to health, even if the delicious water is drunk for a lifetime and used for food preparation. This is indeed usually set by law. So for tap water, the limit value for trace substances hazardous to health is far below where recognizable damage to health occurs. But to be honest, even if all this is permanently controlled by law, it is honest and important to say that even the smallest as well as legally permitted amounts of trace substances are harmful to health if they occur in drinking water. So tap water is usually always contaminated with trace substances, even if the quality is permanently checked, and a minimum amount of trace substances is legally defined and allowed. As far as the very valuable minerals that the human body needs and that are contained in drinking water and tap water are concerned, these contain more or less of the important minerals depending on their origin, which can vary depending on the source, lake water, or groundwater. If, in comparison, mineral water, that is to say the so-called brand waters, are examined, then tap water actually does very well, because only about half of the commercially available brand waters contain significantly more minerals than tap water. This is also explained by the fact that the human body can only absorb a certain amount of minerals, which are also usually already contained in the solid foods that human beings eat every day. This means that as a rule, a high mineral content in water is not particularly necessary but quite normal. Nor is a high and special value necessary under certain circumstances, because water absorbs many valuable minerals in the course of its natural cycle, which human beings and every other life form need for a healthy life. It is also worth explaining that trace substances in the range of micrograms mg and nanograms ng are present in water, but these are small units of measurement in minimal form that can be classified as unimaginably small. If, for example, human beings drink a medicine with a concentration of 100 nanograms of active ingredient, it would take them 700 years to absorb 100 nanograms if they drank 2 liters of water a day. That is actually what I know and have to say.
I find what you have explained not only interesting but also enlightening.
But now I have a question regarding the apparitions of the foreign figures that have been appearing more and more around the center lately. Have you found out anything and gained any insights? It is not about the foreigners you and I know, as you say, but about some figures that are unknown to you and me. Several of our FIGU members have already observed how they appeared on the surveillance screens, but were not recorded, so they remain unknown and cannot be identified afterwards when the surveillance is searched back. Madeline was also able to observe this when she brought me coffee in the office, so she wrote a short article about it, namely the following.
Scurrilous. Today, Sunday the 14th of May, 2023, about 11 o'clock HRS, I, Madeline, brought Billy a coffee into his office, and there, on one of his surveillance screens showing the area in front of the house entrance, we saw a figure dressed in white, hovering about 70 to 80 centimeters above the ground. It was a human being, somewhat huddled together, estimated to be about 150 centimeters tall, and, as I said, completely wrapped in white and wearing a kind of overall with a hood. It was really a human being, and he was hovering slightly askew above the ground, but we could not see his face correctly, so we could not see his profile either, for it was not exactly visible, this because the figure was almost turning its back on us. At first it remained motionless, but then it moved minimally. Immediately I wanted to convince myself of the existence of the person with my own eyes at the scene of the event, which is why I immediately went outside, but as is so usual and often happens in the center, there was no one to be seen in front of the house, although the figure was still visible on the screen when I returned to the office. Then, however, the figure dressed in white changed its crouching position to vertical, only to disappear abruptly shortly afterwards, vanishing into thin air, so to speak. The whole event may have lasted for a period of 4 to 5 minutes. It happened in exactly the same manner as Billy, Mark, Hartmut, and Bridget had experienced on the 20th of March 2023, which Bridget recorded in a small article at the time. This time, too, the same thing happened as always when such things have happened, namely that afterwards, nothing could be seen in the recordings of the stored image material, because in each case the figures could be seen on the screens but were not recorded, as has happened many times before, which can be testified to by various observers. Madeline Brugger.
Interesting. But we have not yet been able to fathom these occurrences. Also in our records we cannot find any evidence, just as our direct efforts to make contact so far have remained fruitless. Effectively, we cannot gain any knowledge because all our efforts so far have been unsuccessful.
So your attempts have been unsuccessful so far. Yes, well, so be it, and you cannot do magic either, even though you can do so many things.
In any case, we will continue our efforts to gain enlightenment. But now I must go again. If you find it necessary, then call me. Besides, I am here on the premises every day, for I am here only as a liaison, but not entrusted with any particular other task. Farewell, my friend.
Take care, Quetzal, and goodbye.
Goodbye.